So yesterday we were continuing with our discussions regarding UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Let us proceed and look at what are the other things that we are discussing as part of UAPA. So we are looking at the criticisms against UAPA, right? The first criticism we have made is that the conviction rate is very, very less. Out of 24,000 odd people who were arrested under UAPA, only 212 of them were convicted. It's only 2%, right? Next, what are the other criticisms? Let us look at other criticisms against UAPA. Next criticism is it was criticized as a draconian law. Draconian law. A draconian law. Again, go back to what we studied in delegate legislation and administrative law. What we say is that there should always be proper checks and balances with regard to misuse of power. And unfortunately, in UAPA, there is no scope for preventing misuse of power. That is what you are right. There was no scope for preventing misuse of power. There was no scope for preventing misuse of power under UAPA. And next criticism here is that the government designating an individual as a terrorist, even before proper trial is completed. Even before proper trial is completed. Right? This goes against the principles of natural justice. This goes against principles of natural justice. It goes against principles of natural justice. It also goes against the concept of rule of law. It also goes against, right, the concept of rule of law. Next criticism is definition of a terrorist is too broad. Definition of terrorist is too broad. BROAD. For example, any person who is likely to threaten, and who is likely to strike terror, you can put both of them in inverted commas. Who is likely to threaten and who is also likely to strike terror can be termed as a terrorist. The burden of proof. The burden of proof of innocence. The burden of proof of innocence is on the accused. Right? That means the government can castigate, categorize, declare any person as a terrorist on the basis of the suspicion that he is likely to involve in terror related activities. He is likely to threaten the unity and integrity of the nation. So all of you can be easily categorized as terrorists. First you will be arrested, after that you have to prove that you are innocent, right? This is where the problem with UAPA. It gives a huge amount of powers to law enforcement agencies, NIA, to declare one single person as terrorist, and it is for that person to prove his innocence. And who is a terrorist? Very broad definition. Any person who is likely to threaten the unity and integrity of the country, who is likely to indulge in terror activities. What are these terror activities? Again, the government will not define. They are not defined. The government says that we will not define them, but we will arrest you. After that, it is up to you whether you want to prove your innocence or not. Otherwise, you can stay in jail peacefully for the rest of your life. That is where it is problematic, right? Right? And there are many examples. There are many examples like Gaur Chakrabarti, name of the person. In GAUR, Gaur Chakrabarti, BORTY. In Bengal, instead of V, they use V. Chakrabarti. That is how they use it. Bengal, right? Bengalis, they don't have any. That is the reason why we say that the only place for them is not even Bay of Bengal also. They don't have any. They already have polluted Bay of Bengal also, right? He had spent 7 years in jail. Had spent 7 years in jail, and he was acquitted of all charges. He was acquitted of all charges. After spending in 7 years in jail, the government said, sorry, you are innocent. Right? That is what happens. As we studied, if you remember, while studying about judiciary, this is what we have said. The process itself is punishment in India. The process itself is punishment. So this process becomes much more draconian under this UAPA. Why? Because the government first declares you as a terrorist, and then, as we studied, as we discussed yesterday also, charges will not be filed at least for 6 months. After that also it is a non-bailable offence under UAPA when you are arrested by NIA, non-bailable offence. Then on top of it, even if the inquiry is held, the judicial process is slow and cumbersome that it would take years and years together. At the end of it, if you are declared as innocent, do you get any kind of justice for the atrocities committed by the state? Obviously not. That is the reason why we call it as a draconian law, right? And the next problem with this law is there is no concrete definition of terrorism. There is no concrete definition of terrorism. There is no concrete definition of terrorism. And once a person is declared as terrorist, he will not be eligible for any kind of employment, public employment and anything else also. Of course, if he is acquitted, that is a different thing. But again, acquittal itself will take very long period of time. So they are not eligible for any public employment. So that means once you are declared as a terrorist, it means the end of your life also. You are not eligible for anything, right? Next, section 15, 17 and 18. Sections 15, 17 and 18. Section 15, it defines the crime of a terrorist action. It defines the crime of a terrorist action. What is terrorist action? As we have said, it is defined in such broader terms that everyone can be called a terrorist and everything can be called a terrorist action. Section 17, it specifies the penalty. It specifies the penalty. Section 17 specifies the penalty for raising funds raising funds to perform a terror attack. Then section 18. What is section 18? It defines the offense of punishment. OFFENCE, offense of punishment for conspiracy to conduct a terror. For conspiracy to conduct a terror attack. Terror attack. Right. So the basic problem with all these sections is that they are defined in such a broad manner that they are always eligible for misuse, right? Then in July 2021, right, some judges have commented about this UAPA. What are the important observations made by the court here? What are the important observations made by the court? First one is terrorist action. Terrorist action should be defined in clear-cut terms, unambiguous clear-cut terms. It should be defined in such a manner. It should be defined in such a manner that goes beyond the capabilities of, this is very important, that goes beyond the capabilities of law enforcement agencies. Terrorist activity should be defined in such a manner that it goes beyond the capabilities of law enforcement agencies to deal it under ordinary criminal law. Ordinary criminal law. It should not be confused. Terrorist action should not be confused with the state's normal law and order problems. With the state's STATES, state apostrophe S, state's normal law and order problems. Right? This is what the Supreme Court has said. So what we are saying here is that if you read the statements there, we have different laws to deal with different situations. What the Supreme Court ruling has suggested is that you must arrest people under UAPA, under the different provisions of UAPA, section 15 or 17 or 18, only when you are not able to deal with them under normal law and order situations. You cannot get confused between terror action and normal law and order problems. If you are criticizing the government, it cannot be UAPA. It cannot be UAPA. If you are criticizing the government, it cannot be UAPA, right? That should not be the case also. And that is what Supreme Court has said. This UAPA should be used only under exceptional circumstances. Only under exceptional circumstances, that too only when there is concrete proof that the concerned person has indulged in terror activities. It cannot be used. For example, you are leading an agitation against the government. For example, farmers' agitation. Can it be called a terror activity? People have the right to criticize their government. People have the right to come onto the streets and protest against their governments. Can it be called UAPA? As I said, 24,000 people were arrested under UAPA. That means 24,000 terrorists. By this time, India should not have been there if you have 25,000 terrorists. They would have been very efficient, and by this time, they could have done something really good also, celebrating 75 years of independence. Right? Nothing has happened. But if that is the case, then why did you arrest 24,000 people? Why? Because misuse. These sections of UAPA have left a lot of scope for misuse by law enforcement agencies. On the basis of the suspicion that you might have funded the terror activities, you can be arrested. On the basis of the suspicion that you might be involving yourself in terror activities, right? Suspicion is more than enough. And then you will be arrested, and more importantly, after that, the burden of a proof of innocence is on your shoulders. You have to prove that you are not a terrorist, which goes against the principles of natural justice. That is what Supreme Court has observed. It has observed that there is a lot of scope for, and there has been misuse of UAPA. That is why it has said that this UAPA should be used only under exceptional circumstances wherein it is not possible to ensure punishment for these terror crimes under normal law and order conditions. This is what it has said. And for the first time, Supreme Court has condemned. What is the significance of this judgment? For the first time, Supreme Court has condemned the misuse of UAPA. Misuse of UAPA. In 2019, 1126 people were arrested under UAPA. 1126 people were arrested under UAPA, whereas it was 897 in 2015. Whereas it was 897 in 2015. Right? Right? This is what ultimately. And then what are the other problems with this UAPA? They have to prove themselves innocent in tribunals, special tribunals that have been set up. Next problem is, once you are accused as a terrorist, you have to prove yourself as innocent in a special tribunals set up for this purpose. Right? Special tribunals that are set up for this purpose. And what is another problem here? These tribunals need not follow. Next problem is, these tribunals need not follow. They need not follow the procedures of ordinary courts while dispensing justice. They need not follow the procedures of ordinary courts while dispensing justice. Right? Then finally, let us come to the solutions. What should be done? What should be done? First and foremost, government must bring about an amendment. Parliament must enact an amendment to prevent the misuse. Please remember, this is what we study about how to reduce the negative impact of administrative law. Second, judiciary can strike down. Judiciary can strike down those provisions of UAPA that clash with the fundamental rights of citizens. that clash with the fundamental rights of citizens. Those are the provisions of UAPA that clash with the fundamental rights of citizens. Next, law enforcement officers. Law enforcement officers. Law enforcement officers should be given proper training. Should be given proper training about the legislation. So that its misuse can be prevented. Right. Next, some communities are under threat due to this legislation. Basically, we are talking about minorities. Mostly these kind of legislations are used against minorities. Where it is TODA, earlier, later POTA, now UAPA. So these communities are always under threat because of these draconian legislations. Minorities, right? So that is the reason why, what is the solution? Government should categorize communities. Mostly it is Muslims. Minorities, Muslims. Recently, during the farmers' agitation, even the Sikh community, they were also called Khalistanis because they were agitating against the 3 farm bills. So that is what is happening. Even poor Arshdeep Singh also was called Khalistani. Right? Terrorists, they catch the bombs. Arshdeep Singh had left it, so you cannot call him. Right? Yes. Pardon? Categorizing communities. That means, how many people were arrested from each community, so that people will come to know whether there is any misuse. Right? That is what we say as part of solutions. This is all about UAPA. I'm sure this will be more than sufficient for you. Anyway, these things are important for our public administration also. Unfortunately, I said that everything is there in our public administration. Right? From UAPA, then we can move on to another important topic. From UAPA, we can move on to another important topic. Right? We will look at this FinTech. We can move on to this topic, FinTech. Right? What is this FinTech? Financial technology. Last year, it was asked in your General Studies paper 3, cryptocurrencies. Right? Last year it was asked in your General Studies paper 3. Cryptocurrencies were asked as part of, I think, is it science and technology or economy? We don't know, but whatever it is. Pardon? Society. Okay. This year they can ask from science and technology. Next year they will ask from economy. You cannot say that in the class we were taught only from economic point of view, so I will not write. Right? So let us see what is this FinTech technology in a financial. Yes. I did not get you. State police, can they, this UAPA can be imposed only by NIA, National Investigation Agency. The state police can recommend. That is the reason why we said that, only those cases which are of extreme severe in nature should be categorized as cases under UAPA. Otherwise, the state police have to deal with the the cases using normal law and order conditions. That is what we have said. Right now what is happening is that, even at the state level also, most of the state governments, what they are doing is, they are using all these laws, sedition laws, section 124A and UAPA against their political opponents also. Otherwise, how can you have 25,000 terrorists in the country? 25,000 is a big number, right? And what did they do? They did not do anything, sitting idle, right? When was the last time we have seen a major terror incidents in India? When was the last time we have seen? 2019, just before the elections, Pulwama attacks. After that, in Jammu and Kashmir only. I am talking about the rest of India, not in Kashmir. There were no terror attacks, right? The rest of India. 2008, Mumbai terror attacks. After that, we have not seen anything. 2000, Jaipur 9. 2009, what happened in Jaipur? Okay. There are small things, they are not big. Terror attacks means at least, you are not even eligible for UAPA also. Try to improve your standards, right? Right. If that is the case, recent, Udaipur beheading of, Taylor was also terror attack, but it is not. They are not. Right? Terror attack means it should be like in a KGF 2 or KGF 3, like that. Right? Or the climax of RRR, like that. They are all terrorists, right? So that is what it is. So I think the time is up. 11:30, right? Okay, then no problem. Tomorrow we will look at this FinTech. You have to look at from all dimensions: economic dimension, technology dimension, security dimension, and from the dimension of a society also, right? We will have to look at all of them. If you have any doubts from whatever we have discussed, you can ask. Otherwise, we can start. Is it related to this? I will discuss this when we start the class. Before that, I will come back in. How much?